So you do a podcast.
Yeah, we have it's the Truckery Podcast.
All right. Is that something that you do? How often do you do it? It looks like there's a lot of episodes, or a good amount.
Yeah, there's a decent amount. We kind of do it when we can because the guy I do it with, Devin from OBS Solutions, lives in Albany.
Okay.
So and like we've talked about, doing it online, back and forth. It's just kind of clunky.
Yeah.
So we usually will plan a day and we'll record like 3 in a day.
Oh, okay.
And usually the first one, we start off like not drinking and it's in the morning and then we go to lunch and then we start drinking. And by the third one, it kind of goes off the rails and then we release them
All right.
weekly from
little,
there.
So it's like a little wave.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think maybe I should start listening to this. I just have to listen to every third episode, right?
exactly.
You gotta
Yeah,
find
that's where it can
find
get
the
spicy.
third one,
Yeah.
and then get on every third.
We had this conversation off the air at some point. We go off the rails sometimes. And what we do a lot of is talk about cars when we're really kind of it's kind of an off-roading overland podcast, I guess, if you had to put it into a box. But we'll talk about Volkswagens, really. That's the one that gets us.
Yeah.
But there was a couple early episodes where we started, we had a longer episode or a long lead up, and I had a few drinks, and I had to ask Colin a few weeks later. I was like, did I do anything stupid? Did I stutter or start slurring my words? Because the next morning I woke up and I was like, oh my God, how do I have a hangover? Oh no.
You really tied one on during the pod.
Exactly. And I've seen a few of our buddies, Mike at some point, I think, not to call him out, but I remember when he was in this garage at one point, and I just remember him opening his 4th beer, and I was like, uh-oh.
Right.
The conspiracy theories are about to start.
Yeah, no, that's the fun part. I've had more than one where the next day I'm like, oh no. And I go to edit it. I'm like, okay, I don't sound too terrible, but I'm definitely a little hammered.
Well, I have Colin he's got my entire livelihood in his hand with the editing. He can just make me sound however he wants.
Right?
I've got enough of your voice now. I can probably feed it into an AI thing and make you say whatever I want you to say.
Could you figure out a way to do that so that I could use it for work?
Definitely.
So you could just do your work calls via AI?
Let's not talk about that too loudly or too often, but yeah. Wouldn't that
create
be
a
sweet?
chat bot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a Sean chatbot.
It'd be fun.
Seanbot.
I've tried to think of the most common thing that I would say, what it might be. I don't know.
I don't know either.
It might be welcome to the Campfire Passport podcast, though.
Wow. Look at you.
I was going to let that go for a while, and I didn't.
Well, you tend to say that often, actually.
That I was going to let it go.
That you're going to let it go.
Because I want to
it goes
push
for,
as far as I can, and then I find an opening, and I just take it.
It was a great transition.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
From a fellow podcaster.
That really means a lot, actually.
We're not as frequent as you guys.
Oh.
We always try to be, but then it just fails.
Yeah. It's hard to be consistent, and that's the main thing from everything that I've seen is consistency.
Yes.
That you want to be as consistent as possible.
Yep.
So
actually, I was having a conversation with some people over the weekend that were talking about podcasting, and 3 people out of this group oh, I had a podcast for a little bit. And they would go off on this story about it and how they went through 3 episodes or 10 episodes or something like that. And I'm such an introvert sometimes that I just said, I probably
no input.
I probably missed an opportunity to tell like 20 people about our podcast, but instead I just it's like, interesting. That didn't work out, huh? Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
That was your opportunity to brag and be like, well, we just did our 50th a couple episodes ago, so
I think the one thing that I interjected was the thing we've talked about before, which is like if you make it past 100 episodes or whatever, you're way more likely to succeed. So I just threw that in there. It's like, if you get to 100 episods, you're significantly more likely to
quit
succeed.
After 3.
And they were like, yeah, we should probably try to get to 100. I'm like,
Yeah. It's excellent advice.
Yeah, I try. So we've got a guest today. Colin, can you introduce our guest?
Wow, you're going to put that on me.
The
host is putting it on the producer for this. Okay. Wow. Well, we have John Carrick from Carrick Customs, and he does really cool OBS Ford truck stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, I mean, you know how I am. I'm a bit of an OBS nerd since I grew up in a couple of them, and I have not lost that love, despite the fact that I have yet to own one.
Yeah, you've never had one, huh?
No,
that's surprising.
Grew up in one and drove one in high school because it was the family's truck.
Yeah,
when my car was broken, I'd drive that. But I haven't gotten to own one. Every time I get close, the deal just doesn't work.
Yeah, I've seen a few slip through on you.
Like that. Remember the red extra cab forever ago that was already, the frame was shortened.
Yep.
It was a 460. It wasn't a diesel, unfortunately, but it was like frame was shortened. It already had like fenders, a doubler, like
oh wow,
all this shit in it, and it was affordable. Like it was very affordable.
It was.
But it was just not the right timing. So it just, like, I was so ready, but it just was not the right timing for me. But it would have been perfect. Yeah. I would have enjoyed it, except for the fuel economy.
Yeah, there is that.
The fuel economy on the 460 sucks, but it's so much cheaper to maintain than a 7.3.
That makes sense, yeah.
And I mean, my only running truck right now is a 460 that I've changed the oil in maybe 3 times in the last 4+ years, and it bounces off the limiter on a regular basis. Like it just gets hammered on because the plan is it's getting a different drivetrain, but
if it ever goes,
yeah, that's the thing. It's like it won't blow up. And it's kind of awesome for that purpose. And I've found that, between the injector size and duty cycle and the fuel pump, like it won't get worse than 7 miles a gallon. So you can just,
it won't get worse.
I don't think it's capable.
That's the baseline.
That's the
limit.
Yeah.
What's the top?
Before it was on 37s, like stock height, stock tires, and it's a 5-speed. So that helps. I got 12.
Okay, that's
on the highway.
I mean, it's not good, but it's not terrible.
But it's not,
It's only like 2 or 3 miles a gallon less than a Power Stroke would get.
Yeah.
But it's real slow. It's
Yeah, they're not fast.
They're not exactly powerful 460s.
No, not at all.
When I was like, I don't know, 4th grade, we had a crew cab long bed, like XL F350 with a 460 and a 5-speed. And I remember I got to like move it in the driveway all the time. It was awesome. It was like the biggest thing that I had ever been around too. Yeah. I just remember being like this, had like vinyl seats, vinyl floor, crank windows. And in my head, the back seat must have been 10 feet wide.
Oh, right.
As far as I'm concerned.
The back seats in the crew cabs are huge.
The shifter is at least, 3.5, 4 feet tall, I think. They are, before we get into your like story, because I think that's something we should do. The OBS Ford is like, I think it's universally loved. I don't think I've ever heard anybody really say that they don't like them. Do you ever run into, I know you don't pay attention to the haters at all, but do you run into any?
Now that you say that, like, not really.
Yeah. It's like,
it doesn't matter what vehicle you're into, everybody's like, oh yeah, I do like those Fords, like that era. It's
kind of universally like one of the best full-size truck, like, aesthetically, and there's a ton of good options. They have a long run and a really diverse line of vehicles too. I don't know. It just seems like it's beloved by many.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
And it's not like the only, automotive scene or circle that I am a part of.
Sure.
I like Chevy stuff. I like, obviously Audi, Volkswagen stuff. And yeah, I've never even thought about that until you said that. I haven't heard anybody say they didn't like them.
I just had kind of a half conversation like that recently where we were talking about iconic trucks, and it just came up. Somebody was like 7.3 Power Stroke. Like that's like a truck that's iconic. And I was like, really? If you think about that a little further, it's that entire generation of Ford, because you have like the OJ Bronco, you have the Lightning, you have the 7.3 trucks, you have Forest Service trucks, even like all of those things really kind of blend together to make like the Chevys of that generation are cool trucks too, and there's some cool ones, but it's not like the same thing. There's not such a
I don't feel like they have the
love.
same footprint that
Whereas
the Fords did.
You could probably argue like a square body Chevy does. Like,
yes,
that's got the staying power, and all of the Ford generations before this were fine, and they have their followings, but they're not like huge. Maybe like 50s trucks, like F100s, maybe, but that's more like hot rod stuff.
Yeah, that's
like,
hot rod stuff. So,
but I don't know. It's like a universally liked vehicle. It's kind of up there, so kind of cool.
Yeah, there's a guy just up the street from my house that he's obviously a Ford guy because he's got like a dent side like desert truck, and I've never seen it move out of the garage, so I don't know what's going on with it. And I'm not the type to go and just talk to my neighbor. So,
but he's got such a cool truck.
I've seen it there many times, but it was like a month or two ago, he brought home like the cleanest teal extra cab OBS, and I just like,
oh really?
I walk by it when I'm walking the dog or whatever, and I'm driving home, and it's God, it is so clean. It is absolutely gorgeous, and it's that perfect like teal seafoam, however you want to call it, color. Ah,
that Calypso green.
Yeah, it makes me so jealous every time I go by.
Damn.
Man, that's a cool truck.
Yeah, they are cool. It's so what got you into these? What's your? I mean, is it? Yeah, go ahead.
It was it's kind of it's an interesting story, I guess, or not. But I had a fast Audi S4 that I went to Pacific Waterlands with you guys in, I don't know how long ago.
10, time ago.
12 years ago,
Yeah.
Probably 12 years ago or more. And at that time I was getting ready to buy my first house, and I needed a truck to be able to like work on the house and get firewood and do all that. So I bought this 73 Ford crew cab, 4-wheel drive that I put a Cummins in, and I bought the truck for like $2,500. I was all in the whole project for like $9,000. And now that truck is worth like 40 or 50.
Yeah, crazy amounts of money.
Ridiculous, but it needed to be fully restored. And I didn't have the money at the time, and I wanted something that didn't need to be restored, that had air conditioning, that like felt a little bit newer. So I sold that and bought a 97 F350 460 5-speed truck that I did a Cummins conversion in as well. And having that, I just started making parts for it, like because things would wear out or I didn't like certain things. And back when forums were a thing, I would do like a build thread, or like a project thread, and I would just take pictures of the parts I was making, and pretty soon people started asking if they could buy them. And foolishly, I'm like, yeah, sure.
Oh, that sounds easy.
I have no product insurance or like anything, but yes, I will sell you like steering linkage, very critical parts. Luckily never got sued. And so it just kind of evolved from there. And I started out of a 2-car garage with just, basic tools. And then it kind of kept growing. And at the same time, I was going to college to be a firefighter paramedic. And I got hired, finished all that, got hired at the fire department and continued doing, selling parts. I ended up getting business insurance and product insurance and all that stuff. So anybody listening, that was that was very early on. I wised up quite quickly. And so then it got to the point where it just kept growing. Built a shop at my old house and then outgrew that and moved into our new place with a much bigger shop, much bigger power service. And it got to the point where going to the fire department was like really taking away from the business side of things. And I worked the least amount of overtime, so I was always the first one to get mandatoried. Mm-hmm. And it just, like, I ran the numbers. I'm like, I can afford to not do the fire department anymore. And it also is one of those, like, the fire department benefits from when I started are not the same as if you started like in the 90s.
Sure.
As far as retirement and all that. So I'm like, I already have to figure out my own retirement.
Yeah.
So I'm not giving up too much. Health insurance, yeah, that was an expensive one. So I worked for the fire department for 9 years and was building the business at the same time. Almost 10 years actually. And then a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I resigned from the fire department, and this is what I do full time.
That's awesome. Cool. What was your first like product? Not like the first thing you sold more than one of?
Steering linkage.
Steering linkage.
And it was poorly designed and did not work well.
Okay.
Yeah. To be honest.
It was more the idea that everybody liked than it was the actual results.
Yeah, it was one of those, like, it was physically, like, the tie rod ends and everything were physically stronger than what the Ford ones were. Okay. But the Y-Link adapter was not, and I had this guy machining them that was not machining them correctly. And so there were issues there, and that's been resolved for 10 years, 8 to 10 years. But that would be the first thing, and that's still probably our number one selling product.
What from there, like what's the scope that you cover? Like I know as a casual, like I know your trucks that I see around kind of thing,
right?
Or trucks that like have come up that you're tagged in, like the Sleeper 7.3 guy with the utility bed. Like that thing is so cool. Mm-hmm. What's the scope of what you're doing at Carrot Customs?
So initially it kind of is, all the products have been based off of things that I've wanted, and I thought were cool. So steering linkage, and then I did a coilover front suspension on my first truck that worked really well, but it was not designed for like production and like user-friendly install. So that got put on the back burner for a while. Then did a bunch of Cummins conversion parts. So Cummins conversion motor mounts, an AC compressor mount so that you can use your factory Ford AC compressor and all your factory Ford AC parts on a Cummins. Nice. And just different little parts that go along with that. And then finally got to like redesigned the front suspension for the Dana 60 so that you can convert your factory 86 or 87 through 97 Dana 60 to links, coilovers, and all of that, and release that. And a lot of what we do now is suspension work. Like we did a coilover suspension kit for the TTB, for F-250s, and we got a long travel, mid travel-ish leaf rear suspension that uses Thurin leafs, and cool. So a lot of it's suspension stuff. And now I'm working on a Duramax swap, so I'm developing the parts for that.
Interesting.
I don't know if there's a market for that yet, but we'll find out.
Duramax in an OBS Ford.
Yeah.
Huh. All right.
I mean, the Cummins thing I don't know how popular it is still today, but for
Very
a while
popular.
there, it was like, I remember it being like the big thing was tons of people were doing it. So I guess it's still going on.
It's surprising. I've sold thousands of Cummins conversion motor mounts.
Yeah.
Like I have no idea how many, but a lot.
Wow.
And they still sell just about every day. I'm like, well, okay, there's still people putting
Still
Cummins
people doing
in
it.
these trucks.
Huh. Is that one of the most popular things you think that you sell? Or is it steering?
That and steering. Yeah. Those two, battery trays, your trinkety stuff.
Yeah.
Which those have the best margins.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
I'm
that's helpful.
happy selling that, but I really enjoy the suspension side of things a lot.
Yeah.
Like that's been a really fun focus. And I feel like when you're younger, or at least for me, when I was younger, like big power and going fast and like doing that stuff was like the coolest thing. And now like, I don't really care about the power. I just want it to like ride good and handle good. And like, you don't need a lot of power to go, have a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
in
Fast
the dirt.
off road.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
fast off road is
It's a lot of fun.
not necessarily as fast as it takes to be fun going fast on road. So
Totally.
Yeah, that is an important thing.
kind of cut that number in half, and it's easily more fun.
100%. And you don't break as much stuff.
Yeah. Well, depends on how hard you send it, I guess.
Yeah.
Sent it pretty hard.
Well, if you buy the right suspension
Buy the right
parts,
stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
steering linkage, things like that are important.
Mm-hmm.
They really
yes.
Yeah, that's true.
are. Man, it seems like you've gotten to a point with this that the level of product that you're making is like helping kind of take these trucks or keep these trucks to the next like level of performance, which is pretty cool. Like when you step back and look at that, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and that's kind of the goal, is like they're obviously becoming quite old, which is interesting to see, because when I got into it, they didn't feel that old.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, yeah, these trucks all kind of feel pretty old, but when you put good suspension in them and they actually ride and drive really nice, it really makes the whole experience a lot better. And you brought up the Sleeper 7.3 guy. It's my buddy JP. He films for Fox.
Oh, okay.
And he was down like for the Baja 500 filming Rob McCachran's truck with Fox's new live valve shocks.
Yep.
And they were chasing him in a like Gen 2 or Gen 3 Raptor. And he came back, he told me, he's like, dude, the whole time I was riding in that Raptor, it was like, my OBS Ford rides and handles better than this Raptor does.
That's crazy.
Which is like the goal.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
Kind of a benchmark to kind of
that's
get
a
to.
major benchmark for
totally.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what makes it fun, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just like I don't know. I think it's a cool thing. Like when you look at the automotive aftermarket, like there are companies that are making parts for new things, new cars, new trucks, and like they're just innovating and pushing forward on that. And then there's like legacy products that stick around forever. And then there's another little spot, which is the companies that take a car or a truck and they like embrace it, right? So you get certain companies that do whatever, certain Audi products or something like that, an 034 maybe for an example, where like they are early Audi stuff. That's what they got into. They still do new stuff. Like they go all over the place, but like that's their thing. And then when you come in with something like this, it's a really neat way to keep that alive and keep it going. And it's not like you're making it for, one specific tiny little market. Like it's wide. You have enough that you can actually make a market out of it, but it's still unique enough that it's special. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it can also be concerning in that sense, like I think about it often, like, what is this going to dry up? Are people going to move on to the next thing, you know?
Yep.
And I don't know. I think that it's kind of in its infancy to a certain degree. Because if you look at, you know, like a 67 through 72 Chevy C10s, there's companies that only make parts for those trucks, and they have for the last 30 years, and they're still in business and doing really good.
Yep.
So that's encouraging, but I just wonder, you know, like, are people going to move on to the next thing? And is it wise to expand into newer stuff? I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have any thought of going into like first generation Super Duty stuff, or?
Yeah, we have one in the shop right now.
That makes that seems like the logical.
That's the
next step.
The next step. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing suspension for those, at least front suspension to start, and we already make Cummins conversion motor mounts for them.
For those, okay.
Yeah.
You gonna go put a Duramax in one of those too?
You know, actually, there's a guy that I've been talking to that designed mounts, well, for a 6-liter. So I guess, like, what would that be, like second generation Super Duty-ish?
I guess technically, yeah. That's
it
like
still feels like
I'm the wrong guy to ask, but yeah.
Well, because they had 7.3s in them at first.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it was like, so I'd like, in my brain, I want to say that would be like, maybe that's the, you know, like the half gen.
There you
Right.
Like a
Yeah.
because it's the truck physically looks almost exactly the same. Like they did like a little headlight change, but outside of that, it's the same truck.
Just a small facelift.
Yeah. So plus a worse motor.
Right.
Yeah.
Though there's 6-liter guys that will fight you on
I
that.
know. People are there's some people that are pretty diehard about that because who knows why? I don't know. That's just
Yeah, that's what I'm not diehard about anything, because the way I see it is basically everything breaks.
Sure.
And everything has its own issues. I like all of it, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's nice to be able to like take the positives from each thing, or the negatives, depending. Like, I don't know, stock 6-liters make a lot more power, so that's great when it works.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the part though, is the works
when it
part.
works.
When it works. Yeah.
And I think a lot of it for me when it comes to those is it's just like because if during that body change, if they had just gone straight to the 6-liter, it would have been like, oh, okay, you know, whatever. This is just, they had a dud for a motor for it.
Yeah.
But when they started with the 7.3, it's like, why'd we change this in the middle? Like why? Like what? You just had them sitting around the factory, so we're going to use up all the 7.3s, and then we're going to switch once we run out of them. But it's like, no, you could have just like done a full body refresh again, and then done the 6-liter, or just done the 6-liter earlier.
Yeah, I'd love to know what actually was going on there. Like if the intent was to keep the 7.3 and maybe like there was an emission standard that changed, or like they were going to do a 6-liter in 2008 or something, and then they were like, oh, well, it's ready to go. That would make sense actually now that I say it out loud. Like, hey, look, let's put this in the truck now. Oh no, it's going to fail. I don't know.
Emissions has so much to do with all of that.
I'm certain of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, it's that era like is when diesel started to like shift into this focus point too, and Volkswagen really helped that out by just absolutely screwing everybody over.
Yeah,
they really ruined diesel in America.
You know, on that, I don't know if this is a popular opinion or not, but I'm like, nice. That's pretty freaking smart.
It was one of the cleverest things that someone has come up with when it comes to that. Like, yeah, that's impressive that somebody thought of. Well, they only test them on a dyno, basically. So
all cars have an emission check feature like that, or most cars, right, where you have to run it through a process to get it into that mode or to reset it.
Mm-hmm.
Volkswagen, at least first, just got caught making it do a very specific thing during that time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at that, like that time frame and when that happened, a lot of them did it. Like there was other manufacturers that had the problem.
First one that got
but
caught.
Volkswagen really got caught, and they were making so many U.S. diesel vehicles at the time that like it just became this big issue, and obviously it just cascaded down. And it's amazing that they're still fine, like more than fine. But
I mean, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
like
I don't know.
But everybody got caught for it. That was the thing. It was just that because they were the first one.
Everybody remembers that. Yeah.
Even though Mercedes was doing it, BMW was doing it, everybody was doing it.
Yep.
So.
But technologically, you're right. That's impressive that not only someone figured it out, because I'm sure that the guy writing the code or whatever was like, that's kind of interesting. But then it went through however many levels of management to get to the final product where they were just like, we're just going to ship these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just see what happens.
See what happens later.
No one will find out.
That's a problem for tomorrow, Volkswagen.
That's the problem for the next CEO, not me.
I mean, isn't that just the name of like the game and everything? It's like, even like Formula One, it's all about like how you can beat the rules.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's like what breeds innovation.
What's the guy's name?
Yeah.
There's a famous NASCAR driver that like was all about pushing. He basically cheated his entire career, but he would cheat like, God, I can't remember. He's a very iconic driver.
Jeff Gordon?
Smokey Unick, I think is the name. I'm pretty sure.
Whoa.
I think. You want to Google that?
I'm on it.
So basically I think he wrote a book or somebody wrote a book on his career, one of the two. And his whole thing was like, he was in this time where he would just do things and then they'd make rules to fix the problems that he caused, essentially.
Right.
So, what do you think, Colin? Am I right?
I mean, that is a person.
Okay.
So
okay. Step one.
Let's see.
It isn't like an interesting concept, though. I mean, that's kind of just how it works. Is if it's not in the rules, then
that's why the rules that's how the rules happen, right? It's like you manipulate the sport until they make a rule to kind of get you through it. So yeah.
Well, to make a rule to try and level the playing field.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like 99% sure.
Did I just see it? Yep. The car was so much faster than the competition during testing that they were sure that cheating was involved.
Because it was.
Yeah, aerodynamic enhancement was strongly suspected in his 66 Chevelle.
Yeah.
Wow.
The F1 thing reminded me I've been seeing this week a bunch of talk about McLaren's rear wing. We're going to go way off the rails for a second, and how they've changed their rear wing design to allow like a certain amount of aero flex at a certain speed. So they're basically making their own DRS system, but it's only because it flexes just right.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And that is maybe why they've gotten a pretty competitive advantage all of a sudden, which is awesome, by the way. It's been great to see.
From what I'm seeing is you're very correct. There's another thing here about apparently, and it was never proven, but rumor has it he was using a basketball inside the fuel tank.
Yep, I remember
so that he could say that the fuel tank was full to get car weight, and then would deflate it,
and then fill.
There's no fuel.
Hey, there's no rule against that. Nobody said I couldn't do that.
Yeah, so when they they would inflate it when the car's fuel capacity was checked and deflate for the race.
I gotta imagine like most teams in the 60s or 70s must have been trying to cheat at some extent, but I gotta imagine like their conversations might have been considerably different. Like, not how do we drive better, how do we go faster, but like what can we do to bend the rule a little more?
Yeah, innovations such as offset chassis, raised floor, roof spoilers, nitrous, and other modifications, often within the letter of the rule book.
See?
If not the spirit, quote, all those other guys were cheating 10 times worse than us.
That's a NASCAR quote.
That's what I've ever heard.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there you go, Sean. You were
Smokey
absolutely
Unick.
correct.
Yeah. I will have to look.
There's a book,
up.
right?
Yeah, that was an excerpt from his book that he has. Yes, It doesn't say what the book's name is. It just has that expert. So, yeah, that's pretty funny. But yeah, that is I mean, it's the case with anything that's competitive. I mean, look at colleges and their football teams.
Yeah.
They were all paying players. It was just who had the most and could hide it the best. And then it became legal. And now look, all these big college teams are not necessarily as good as everybody expected them to be, because now everyone can spend money on players.
Yeah.
And get away with it. So it's leveling the playing field is all it's doing now. So
Until somebody finds the next
so somebody
thing
finds the next way to
to inflate a basketball in their fuel
in
tank.
their fuel tank.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
how
so
many
clever.
gallons does that's got to be like, what, a gallon and a half or something?
Maybe. But that's like 10 pounds.
Right. How
So-
many laps do you get out of a gallon and a half? One?
Maybe. I don't know. And I would imagine it's different now than it was then. I have no idea.
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, so like in modern racing, like in Formula One, for example, again, like fuel is important, right? We
Mhm.
saw somebody this year lose a race or get it taken away because they were underweight because they didn't have enough fuel. So
Yeah.
they should have put a basketball in George Russell's fuel tank. All I'm saying.
Solved all the problems.
I mean, there's no problem. It was Hamilton won.
Yeah,
It was fine.
according to
We've
you,
gone
anyway,
over
yeah.
this. See, I told you we go off topic.
No, I
sometimes.
love
it.
it.
Just goes like F1 has actually been a current distraction. Like in this season, there's been at least 4 episodes where we've like kind of tailored off, and it seems like Luke is never here for those, and he's the
Mhm.
one that really should be. He's probably in his car yelling every time it happens.
Well, he's already admitted to that. So
yeah.
So we know he is.
You have some of those listeners too.
Oh, yeah.
That will yell at the.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm certain. We also have just like our friends that have been on the show that I like. It's one of my favorite things to say a controversial thing that I know at least 2 of them will be upset about when they're not here.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best. And if we can even group together and gang up on them when I've got another person in the room that has the same opinion, even better.
Mm-hmm.
100%. That's the same
Yeah.
with us.
That's good.
It's so fun.
Like, say, the color of Luke's Jeep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Those are yellow, which is orange.
Those are orange.
Okay, so products up till now, products for the future. You have a new shop in the last few years that's bigger, better.
Yeah. Moved from like a 1,700 square foot shop to a 3,000 square foot shop
Okay.
out in Tumalo. And the property actually, the gal we bought it from had a 600 amp commercial power service put in
Oh my God.
to run her greenhouse for growing, the sticky icky.
Okay, Mary
And
Jane.
Yes. Funny side note on that is when we were in the process, or like right after we got this place, I happened to be friends with the lead marijuana detective for Central Oregon Sheriff's. And he's like, "Hey, can I use your property to stake out your neighbor's greenhouse? I think I've gotten tips that they're growing marijuana." I'm like, "Yeah, but that was in my greenhouse."
Turns out that was mine.
That trail has gone
Yeah.
cold, my friend.
Yeah,
I'm
you
sorry.
can come check it out, but there's no more growing. And so, we tore sold the greenhouse because not that I'm opposed to it. I just didn't need a commercial automated,
It's not really your revenue source.
Yeah. We calculated how much we could make,
Maybe should have gotten out of the truck business.
but then we would have been in the real worse than
Yeah.
Volkswagen,
Sure.
Dieselgate business. So
Yeah.
but the power service was like, when you're welding all day, every day, having a big power service and running machines, that was a big key part to it. So
Yeah.
it kind of just all worked out. And it was, being in Bend, to rent shop space locally is just astronomical.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was cheaper for us to buy this place and still do it from, home, air quotes, and then pay ourselves rent than to rent a commercial building in town.
Yeah.
So it's kind of worked out, and working from home has its pluses and minuses.
Sure, of course.
Because I can see work
All the
from my
time.
kitchen window,
Yep.
all the time. But I would complain if I had to drive into the shop every day. Sort of, there's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's good. Are you doing any, like, do you build any vehicles in house? Like, are you taking on like that utility bed sleeper 7.3? God, 5.3. Well,
5.3. That would be a fun
could
one.
be cool too. Are you doing any of those like in-house builds?
Yeah. So the sleeper 7.3 truck, JP is his name. He hit me up and wanted to do some trade work for video stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And actually, my wife is the one who convinced me to do it, because initially I'm like, I don't know. This is a lot, and she's like, no, we need to do this. I'm like, all right, sounds good. So, and she runs all the finances, and she works for the business full time as well.
Oh, cool.
So I'm like, all right, I trust your judgment here. We'll do it. But yeah, we do a lot of customer installs. Like right now we have a truck in the shop. It's a really sweet crew cab short bed. The guy bought it from the original owner. He's a big car collector, has a really incredible collection of cars. And it's getting all of our suspension on under it, and like the cab's off, frames getting stripped. Wow-ish. It's like, it's not a frame off, quote unquote, restoration. It's a clean up the frame, make it look good. Whole bunch of maintenance work on the motor, just a bunch of bringing it up to par, intercooling, basically doing everything that like a Super Duty 7.3 has: intercooler, better fuel system, Hydro Boost brakes, and getting rid of the belt driven vacuum pump, all that stuff. And yeah, so right now we're booked out at least a couple months on doing customer installs.
Nice.
And if we're really slow, then we'll take on general mechanic work. But usually both lifts are taken up with
long-term project type stuff.
Yeah, or suspension installs where both axles are getting rebuilt, and basically from the steering column down, it's all, new suspension and axle wise.
That's nice. It's nice to be able to do that in-house and not have it take up your like R&D process too much. Like if you're able to balance that.
Yes, that is always the balance, because when like I've got one full-time guy, one part-time guy, and when we're just doing R&D work and I'm paying a full-time guy to do it, or like to work with me on it or whatever, and we're not billing out hourly. It's like, oh, this is hopefully this product, like
that tally just starts
yes,
to build.
Every hour I'm like,
Yeah.
hopefully this works. But yeah, it is a fine line, because R&D is really expensive.
Yeah.
And it's extremely time consuming. You waste a lot of materials. But R&D is how we make the products that we sell. And it's a balance. When we're doing a lot of R&D work, we'll turn down customer installs.
Sure.
So if we have time, then we'll bring them in. Luckily, online sales make up enough of the business where we're not dependent on customer installs.
Yeah. Are you stocking most of your make or made to order on most things?
No. Almost everything we have on the shelf ready to ship out. And if it's not on like the finish side, it's on the welding side, ready to be welded and then ship out. And in-house, we will, so we prototype everything in-house, have a CNC plasma, a cheap, or not cheap, but, hobbyist style press brake, CNC tube bender, which we do use for production. So we will do all the design and prototype work in-house. And once it's quasi-finalized, then we send the CAD drawings and sometimes the finished part to our laser cutter, and he will, laser cut it, which is way better than a plas cut table, and CNC press brake. Once all that's, finished, he has all of our files and prints, and, then we just submit a PO, and he cuts and bends everything, comes back to us, we weld it all together, and ship it out. Nice. The only exception is steering linkage. We bend all the steering linkage, we get all the tubing, cut, bend it in-house, weld it, and ship it out.
Nice. That's cool. Are you still on the R&D side? Are you still, you started with I was making things that I wanted. Is that your path still?
Yeah. I mean, not to sound cocky or arrogant, but I feel like the things that I like, other people would like too.
Sure.
And I won't sell things that I wouldn't personally have on my own vehicle. I'm not going to just make something because I think it's going to make money.
Sure.
It's got to make sense. It's got to be something that I would personally use. So going off of that has worked thus far.
Yeah, I think, anybody that's running a company that is like yours, either your size or an enthusiast-owned company, for lack of a better term, usually the barometer of where you're going to go is pretty clear, and that's because you're an enthusiast, right? That's kind of the reason.
Exactly.
And the companies that aren't, sometimes are successful because they have people in positions, maybe in R&D or in development or whatever, where they can kind of follow that same path, but the passion isn't quite there. And so you don't see the same thing you see with your shop or a Thurin Fab or something like that with, let's just, Fab Tech, right? Something like that they just make suspension. Nobody cares.
Skyjacker.
Sure. Yeah.
Your classic.
And maybe they started that way. I don't know. It's possible that there's a position, or a time where they were different, but not so much anymore,
Yeah.
So it's a different thing. And I think that enthusiasts see that. I just saw this interesting little slideshow about how private equity works, and kind of in the automotive space, because we just had this conversation about that's how happened with a bunch of big companies and how they've
Donut and Hoonigan.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was the thing. And it's just kind of an interesting thing because there's this process where somebody makes a company and they create these products and this following because of the way that they're so passionate about it. And then they get really high demand, and that high demand changes into, okay, I got to hire a lot of people, and that's great. And that's kind of the spot where it's really singing and everything is working really well. And then maybe they get a little tired, and then they really have way too much business, but they can't figure out how to do it. And someone comes in and they say, hey, we can help you with that. And they can. And so they do, and they come in and they do help. And then it goes pretty well for a little while. And then that power starts to shift the other way, right? And then that company that owns the company starts to take over, and then you kind of watch the decline. And the argument that I saw in this little article was talking about how that's necessary, because that takes the companies and basically flips them through and allows a new place to start, which I thought was kind of an interesting point. You get
that is a good perspective.
Yeah, you get through the process where maybe, what I'm trying to think of a good example of it. Company A, let's just say they rise to fame, they do well, they start to fall off, their customer base starts to fall off, and their customer base starts looking for another option. And as that happens, they go out of business essentially, or they get absorbed into something and they're not really the thing they are, but somebody else essentially comes in and creates something in that space usually. So I don't know. I don't know if it's it's a way to keep innovation fresh maybe, but ultimately you want to see somebody last for 30, 40 years, but if they can't, then it's nice to know that maybe somebody will pop up in their place. I'm trying to think of like a good, like Fox in place of Skyjacker, like that if you look really big out like that, that's kind of it, right? A Fox shock hasn't been around for a truck since the 60s. That's not a thing. Skyjacker has, but that, like, the Skyjacker name has changed, right? And then now it's kind of like evolved into something newer and better. My timeline might be way off. I just want to say that. If anybody's listening and thinking, that doesn't seem right, just know that I might be wrong.
Yeah, I can't fact check you there.
Here, you want
to? No.
I'm like 99% sure that Skyjacker's been around forever. Because I think I went through their SEMA booth and I was like, wow, it's 1958 or whatever. Like, this is amazing.
I mean, I feel like I've seen some really old, like, Skyjacker ads.
1974.
Like ads. Yeah, see.
Okay.
74. That is a long time.
Yeah. But the point being, like, that company is not the same as it was in 74, and, like, true enthusiasts, in quotes, kind of know that. So,
yeah.
Whereas the next generation might be whatever. It might be ADS, it might be Fox, it might be King, it might be Radflow, who knows, as that goes along. But then those will cycle through eventually and it will change.
Yeah, I mean, it brings the prices down of stuff that were seen as like top level.
Yep.
And because then the next top level thing shows up. So, I mean, it's nice. It sucks to see things that were like a cool enthusiast, like people that actually cared.
Yeah.
Like go by the wayside, but it brings the bottom of the standard up.
Yeah.
So like at some point, Fox 2.0s are going to be like that's the worst shock you want to buy.
Sure.
Which
there
not
will
terrible.
Always be Monroe and KYB.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean,
Sure.
for the generic, you
Yeah.
know, the street cars.
Yeah.
But like off-road wise, I mean, but Bilstein's probably always going to be a thing too. So like that's kind of like that's the cheapest decent shock you can get, and then it just goes up from there. But
Well, it's like you have like a boutique home product, right? And it does really well. And then all of a sudden Target or Walmart wants to buy it. And we all like to make money. You're like, well, shoot. Yeah, I'll sell it to you. And then it just becomes mainstream. You're no longer boutique, and it allows room for somebody else to come in and make,
their boutique item.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough because I think most people that are really into these kinds of things want to sit and say, I wouldn't do that. Like, it's the band that won't take a record label, whatever. But that's a hard decision.
When you've got that much money flashed in front of your face.
Yeah, or like, maybe you're just over it. Maybe you've been doing it for 20 years. It's been a grind, and somebody says, hey, I'll give you enough money to retire to get out of it. Like,
yeah.
Is that always bad?
The Rotiform guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Total enthusiast.
Can I give you
deal, and then
sure, yeah. Can I give you a boost in your career and a paycheck? Hard to say no to that.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't blame anybody in that position. I do blame some people in some of these positions, but for most people that like really came up trying to make a cool product, sold it out, moved on. Maybe they're making cool stuff. Like, actually, Rotiform thing is a good example. So one of the guys, Jason, has a different company, and they are Alterman Club, or he is. He's making really cool Mark I parts and
That's
cool merch,
awesome.
and it's awesome. And like, you look at it, and it's very categorically his brand. You can just watch it and go, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. And it's a cool product. It's a needed product. It's reasonably priced. It's high quality. Makes sense. So that's like that whole little circle of life, if you will,
I mean,
of a product like that, or a business.
As we know, this is the Volkswagen podcast. So,
oh yeah,
I mean,
actually, I was going to ask.
He's going to be replacing the they're in Mexico, the SB, the small bumpers
Oh, yeah.
company.
I don't think so.
I mean,
Maybe. But I
it'd
don't
be
think
nice if somebody would,
He's
because
making disc conversion kits that are like made with OEM parts that are pretty sweet.
Mm.
And then some other things. Whatever they are, I'm sorry if you're listening, Jason. I don't remember. You're not.
Yeah,
So
I
it
don't
doesn't matter.
the, I just think of, products for Mark 1s, and all I think is small bumper and how much of a hassle it is
Oh, yeah.
to get anything from there, because it all ships from Mexico. So it's like, it takes forever. Communication's not great. You just kind of hope
Hope that you get
that
what you
it's going to
bought.
show up, and just,
What's the Mark 1 market like? Is it super expensive right now, or?
It's interesting. I haven't been paying attention to the cars themselves very much. I don't know. I think that they're kind of like bugs. They like flatlined at a point, and I don't think they ever really like gained a lot of value, but they didn't drop. So I think you can still buy a great example for that like $8,000 to $12,000 range. Like gets you a pretty good early Mark 1. I think a great one that's like built and ready to go is probably $20,000, but they never got to like 50. It was never like
Right.
yeah.
a bus or like a built 7.3 or like whatever. Like those like they're a little different, but they're also cheaper cars to start. So I think that might be part of it. But they are super uncommon. That's like the one little catch. Like finding one that is good is really hard.
Yeah, it's gotten more and more hard, yeah.
I looked for like just a little bit years ago, and I was like, I can't find the one I want. And like we've had this conversation before, we're like, oh, well, maybe you get a 4-door. And I'm like, I don't want a 4-door. I want a pre-79 2-door. That's the only car I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so like there's two for sale, and one is $25,000 and it's perfect, and one is $2,000 and it's not there. Like,
yeah.
so I'm not buying one basically at that point. But yeah, it's a weird market. Volkswagens are a weird market. Like I've watched them fluctuate this weird amount in the last like 5 years, where they're just like never really caught on like some cars, but they didn't fall off all the way either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. How's the pre-96 Audi market?
It's basically, it's either a pile of crap, and you'll see it two ways. It's a pile of crap that somebody's just trying to get rid of for nothing, or it's a pile of crap that somebody thinks that they can get a ton of money for because there's not enough of them around.
Yeah.
Or it's like really nice and it's insane priced. I mean, granted, John just, what was it, within the last 2 years you sold the wagon?
2.5, because I used that money to put the earnest money down on my house.
Well,
Yeah.
adulting is hard.
Yeah.
That it sold for a little less than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping Scotto would buy it, and Dave Picaro was trying to get him to buy it, but he had other things going.
So did it end up selling on Cars and Bids, or?
Yeah, it sold for just under 27.
All right.
Pretty good, yeah.
So, yeah.
And the selling experience with Cars and Bids was okay?
It was pretty flawless. I tried to get it on Bring a Trailer, and I got turned down. And I'm like, and then I saw, within a month, they put another S6 Avant on there that was not a special car. I'm like, what in the world? How did I not make the cut? This is a one of two like S6s in this, combo in the States, and it has under 100,000 miles on it. Like, I just didn't get it. But whatever.
It's still sold, so
yeah. I'm a little sour to Bring a Trailer, but it's still sold, and some dude on the East Coast bought it, which I was disappointed about.
Yeah, far away.
Yeah.
Far away and rust.
Yes.
That's why he bought a West Coast car, was because all the ones around him were rusted. So
I know. And I hope that it's taken care of. I haven't heard from him since it was picked up. I do miss that car, but I don't miss it enough to, lose sleep about it.
yeah, that's fair.
Do you think you'll end up in another early Audi like that again at some point? Is that something that's on your radar?
Yeah. My brother-in-law has he bought a 92 S4 from me.
Okay.
White, high miles car, and he just asked me if I wanted to buy it back. And I'm like, I don't need a car right now. But then my sister-in-law was at my house the other night for, like a girls' night with my wife and some other girls. And I pulled into the driveway and saw that car, and I'm like, oh man, I forgot how much I like that. And I opened the door, and there's a car seat in the back and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's still like pretty clean. I kind of want it. And he wants my Jetta TDI, the one I drove today, complete piece of junk. But he has to make like a 30-minute commute every day now for work.
Okay.
And
So he's looking for the hypermiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you want to trade cars for a while? Sure.
I mean, that seems like a great,
that's a
great option.
Yeah. It's not a permanent trade, but
No, but if he's going to see that 50 miles a gallon, he's going to be like, oh, okay, this is pretty great.
yeah.
Fuel prices are low. You might talk him into it.
Mhm.
Yeah. We'll see. Right now, I have too many projects to finish that having, pre-96 Audi just isn't what I need at the moment.
They take up a little
Yeah.
bit of your energy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
That's not like a light commitment car.
No, they're not.
What's your current stable of projects? What's the you have?
Well, the biggest project I have right now is I'm remodeling my house.
Oh, okay, that's a huge project.
Of course.
Right now we're living on subfloors and can see studs, and the majority, and have been for the last 6 months. So that's not really going anywhere. But aside from that, my car projects, I've got the Duramax swap truck that I just got the engine back from the machine shop. And this is going to be a really fun one because I've always liked the Duramax trucks, like Duramax Allison combos.
Yeah.
They're super comfortable. They've got lots of power. They drive really nice. I love the way they shift. But I never was a huge fan of the Chevys. I like them. They're fine. I'd drive one. But I wanted to do something unique, and I think putting one in a Ford is fun. And from a marketing standpoint, I'm like, it's going to piss off the purists, but they'll still watch on both sides.
Yep.
And some people might actually like it. And it's actually surprising how many people I've had contact me saying as soon as the parts are ready, they want to know. So that'll be a really fun one because it bolts into the factory 7.3 motor mounts. It fits better than a 7.3 does. The plan is to make the wiring harness so that when somebody buys the conversion parts, that it will plug into the factory Ford 42-pin connector in the engine bay.
All right.
And not have to punch any more wires through the firewall. And we might be able to use a 7.3 throttle pedal, so you don't even have to change that.
Jeez.
That's crazy.
We're in the process. We'll see how
No
it
promises.
all turns out. Yeah, as soon as the engine's assembled, then it's wiring time. Mounts are done. But yeah, so that's kind of the long-term project. I've got my crew cab short bed TTB truck with a 460. As soon as I have the Duramax done and another truck to be able to drive, we're going to do a swing set style steering for the TTBs.
Cool.
That I want to do. It's probably going to be a mix of some Heim joints, but as many tie rod ends as possible, because I don't like making things that are so strictly off-road that, you have to, Heim joints are a pain in the butt because you got to lube them all the time. They get noisy and clunky. And I want something that works really well in both scenarios. So that's next. And then the plan for that truck is to do all the conversion parts for a 7.3 Godzilla with the 10-speed auto.
Yeah.
Because you can get that full combo from Ford Performance with all the computers, wiring harnesses that essentially just need, key on power, constant, and ground for $20,000, which sounds like a lot. Building a Duramax, I've realized that that's not
drop in the bucket.
That's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
But $20,000 to have a brand new 10-speed transmission, brand new 7.3 Godzilla that makes 475 horsepower, 475 foot-pounds of torque, and you put a supercharger on it, and you're at like 700.
Yeah. Have you seen? I'm sure you have. I'm going to ask you a question that's dumb. But have you seen the people that have dynoed those in stock form? They're insane. They make all of the power they say they make.
Yeah,
so,
they're impressive.
Yeah,
for a pushrod V8, right? Yeah, it's pushrod motor still.
It is like weirdly looks like an evolution of an LS LT motor. Like it's kind of the same thing. It's awesome. So anyways.
And it comes with all the computers, everything. So that's kind of the game plan for that one. And then I'm loosely shopping for another like product development truck to be able to just work on different new ideas. But I'm trying not to accumulate too many projects at the moment, because
aren't we all?
Yes. And I currently am driving an 02 Jetta TDI auto that I got 4 cars for $1,500. They were all TDIs.
Wow.
Only one of them ran.
TDI you ever got right there.
So I sold the rest of them and fixed this one, and it's got 280,000 miles.
That's fine.
Sounds like a TDI, yeah.
Yeah. Then my wife's car is a B6 Audi A4 Avant, so a 2003 that I pulled the 1.8T out of and put a ALH TDI in.
Oh, cool.
And TDI 5th gear in the transmission, so it's an all-wheel drive TDI.
Nice.
But the chassis has 285,000 miles.
Yeah.
We've had that car for 10 years, and she's ready for something else. So
cool. Something with less miles.
Perhaps a pre-96.
No.
Hey, there's that S4 that's got the car seat in it.
Right?
There you go.
And honestly, I'm ready to get her something that has a warranty.
An appliance.
Yeah, she wanted an FJ70 right-hand drive, import car. I'm like, yeah, that'd be really cool. I'd love to have one of those. But that doesn't have a warranty, and that means I still have to work on it, and it's still an old car.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I want to get you something that I don't have time to work on my own stuff as it is.
Right.
I want one new reliable vehicle. So that's kind of the state of things. And then we have an 83 Toyota pickup that I got from Joel that he gave me because he got it just for the camper.
Right.
And that thing just runs. It's the most reliable vehicle I have.
Of course it does.
Yes.
Big surprise there, right?
Yeah.
That's the shop truck.
That's great.
So
nice.
Yeah.
That's a lot of trucks.
Yeah.
And like you said, he's still loosely shopping for another OBS for product.
Well, yeah.
Stuff.
So the one that's getting the Godzilla swap eventually, that's the 460 that is hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even really hanging on for dear life.
It's just fine.
The great part about this truck is, so it's got our front suspension, TTB, like 14, 15 inches of travel in the front with 37s. And the rear has our long travel rear leaf suspension with King 2.5 piggybacks, custom tuned. And the leaf springs we use are actually Thurin's. Thurin does all of our shock tuning and source all of our Kings. Most of our weld joints for the suspension are from Thurin. And that truck, I'll be fourth gear pinned through whoops in it. And then the next day hook up to the dump trailer and go, put it to work. And this summer towed the boat down to Lake Shasta, 4.5 hours away with some dirt bikes in the bed. And
nice.
Like, it just never misses a beat.
That's great.
It's kind of like, it's like the Swiss Army knife of trucks.
What is it? It never gets less than how many miles to the gallon?
7.
That's it. That's its floor.
Yeah.
Just does whatever you want.
It's
not fast.
No.
It does it slow and loud.
That's all. You just leave it. It does it. Yeah.
Yeah, it just does it. It doesn't, blow your
Yeah.
wig back and make you all happy when it's doing it. You're just like, oh, it gets it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've talked about it before. That era of trucks, SUVs, all that is like, and I think that's probably what part of the staying power of it is that has to be one of the best eras of off-road, 4x4s in general.
Sure.
Like everything from like that late 80s to mid 90s, like late 90s they were all really good. There's no, you can like whatever you want to like. It doesn't matter what you like, because in that era, everything was totally killer. Land Cruisers, the Ford trucks. Montero was trying to compete with Land Cruiser, and they did a fairly solid job at it. Not that they were as popular, obviously, because it doesn't say Toyota on it, but they're
Cherokees.
Yeah, and then there's the Cherokees, the Grand Cherokees. All the 4-wheel drives from that era, they have a huge following.
Oh, yeah.
So
and they seem to do really well.
Yeah.
And on that note, when asking about projects, one of the things, once we get like a little bit of breathing room from product development stuff, and I know you guys just recently did this release, I thought, is I want to build like a crawler-ish of some sort with an OBS, and I want to run the Rubicon.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want something that, because I have enough like kind of spare parts truck stuff, a few Dana 60s laying around, a few Sterlings. Like I could throw together a down and dirty, wheeling rig pretty quick. And I think it would be really fun because like my 460 truck is kind of too nice to, like, I'll go beat it up off road, like doing fast stuff, but I don't want to risk body damage with rocks.
The panels are too nice.
Yeah. Like the sheet metal is just too nice. And it's a crew cab short bed, which is like kind of a, it's a 2-year only truck, and it's worth too much for me to abuse to its fullest extent.
I will say in our group, we had a very inexperienced off-road driver in a full-size Chevy. It was an extra cab, it's a Duramax truck.
Yeah.
And it's solid axle swapped.
Okay.
And he's bobbed. Frame's not shortened, but it's like kind of bobbed.
It's flatbed. Short flatbed.
Yeah. And he got away with no body damage. He did break his transmission, but
really? How?
He got a crack in the like intermediate housing between the transmission and the transfer case.
Yeah.
And didn't notice it until we were off the trail and had gotten all the way into Reno from Tahoe.
Yeah.
And that's when it started acting up. And like somebody yelled at him, like, "You're dumping fluid," and he like pulls over, and sure enough, just
lost everything,
tons of transmission fluid. So, yeah, but no body damage.
Still, yeah.
It did really. It's relatively built up. It's not like it's nothing. It's on big tires, and it's got
Super
big
Duty
suspension.
front axle.
Yeah, Super Duty front, radius arms, coilovers. It's on
Nice.
39-inch KO2s. It's got lockers. It's geared. It's got all the things. It checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
But he is admittedly not like a driver. He's very capable at a lot of things. He's just inexperienced. And man, he took that thing through, and it did fine. It skipped no beats. Like it did everything he pointed it at. Basically, is there anything that he couldn't?
Well, I mean, he didn't try Soup Bowl, but
sure,
not many of us did.
Yeah.
So
yeah, basically everything he put it through, it just did.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's pretty good. I don't know, height, wheelbase.
not to give
all
you
that
too
stuff.
much confidence and just go ahead and take the truck. You don't want to hurt
Yeah, but
out there.
definitely heard it.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. Let's go. We'll go
No,
with you.
I'm all for it. Honestly, body damage is the only thing I'm worried about.
Yeah,
It
and with a
is-
full size, that is a worry. I mean, because there were not full sizes with us that took body damage. So
A little bit.
Yeah. What did you take?
I kept kind of bashing my like rear quarters, like the lower part of my like under the taillight, and it was totally fine. And then one time I got into it a little bit too far, and it's just because I don't have any like no protection there, and I know that, but I just didn't really think about it being lower. And then I also nicked above my taillight because I was an idiot and took the bypass around Soup Bowl with the worst line ever. I just was not paying attention. That trail will just bite you if you're not paying attention.
Mhm.
Any spot you could just kind of go, I'm going to go in cruise control for a second, and then all of a sudden, bam.
Yeah.
You take it. I'm so lucky I didn't blow out a taillight there, which it wouldn't have mattered. It's not like it's the end of the world. Actually, it might have been better if I hit the taillight than above the taillight. But
Yeah, it wouldn't have been body at least.
yeah. And I think Colin's truck, the Super Duty or the Duramax it's got like a dent in the rocker. I think the slider like bumped the rocker.
Oh,
in
well,
one spot.
also his sliders weren't really like sliders. They're pretty clever the way that him and Gino made them, but like their body mount, like slider. So it's like a pretty nice piece of plate that's like formed and goes onto like the
Kinda like the
rocker of the
yeah.
body basically, and then it's got like a kick out tube on it, and then it's just is like bolted in, but it's only bolted into like the body itself. There was nothing going into the frame. But the thing is so tall, like it barely touched anything anywhere, but apparently it got one like spot, which
got a little wave, but it's not. I mean, you can't even tell. You'd have to look for it.
Yeah.
Like it's not something you'd ever know.
Yeah. Not surprised.
So, yeah, you should definitely bring that truck on the Rubicon or any truck.
One of these days.
Yeah.
I have a parts truck. Well, yeah. I've got a cab, chassis, bed, everything, and I have a clean title for it.
This is a whole other truck. Is what you're saying.
Oh yeah. I mean, I didn't mention those ones. Those are just the.
So there's a salvage yard too.
Yeah. Oh
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a bit of a salvage yard behind the shop, but that's the one. We'll see.
That's
one of
the one
these
that's the
days,
closest.
That's the closest. Because I also would love to do like LS swap stuff, and like if I was to build like a dedicated wheeler, I think if especially starting with a truck with no motor, I think starting with an LS would be great.
Gives you a lot of options.
Yeah, they're cheap, they run good, they're like, why, aside from from somebody's purist
Sure.
ideologies,
Which obviously you're
Yeah,
following.
We've established that we care so highly of.
oh, I love the purists. Yeah, no, I think that would be fun one day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I've seen it once or twice at LS, but they're usually in like a Bronco or something like that. Because I guess there's somebody that makes a kit to bolt them up to the 5 speeds.
Yes, it's fairly recent,
Yeah.
and to like a ZF5, a small block ZF5.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Which I don't know. I think if I was to build a wheeler, I wouldn't want a manual.
Mm-mm.
I'm with you on that one.
Stick with the auto.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely. I don't get it unless you like.
Unless you've got a lot of gearing.
Yeah, I was gonna say unless it's a Toyota.
If you've got
And
doublers,
that's the way
then
you
it's
get-
like, okay, you can balance that out a little bit. But
Other
if
than
it's just a standard transfer case, it's
Working
can
the
be
clutch
rough,
hard.
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't. It seems like extra work.
Yeah, for not much payoff.